Hey everyone, today I'm going to be doing a video talking to you about this gorgeous rifle I have before you. This is a Yugoslavian M48 Mauser. This thing is chambered in 8mm Mauser, and basically, so you guys may have seen other surplus rifle videos I've done on the channel, but one rifle that I've always wanted to try out is a Mauser, really any type of Mauser. Now the most iconic one is going to be the 98K, which was used primarily by the German infantry during World War II. This one, obviously being an M48, as the name would imply, came after the war and was a design made by the Yugoslavians. They made a couple of different changes to the popular Mauser design. Now, obviously, these coming after World War II did not see as much use as a lot of those other Mausers out there. However, these did see extensive use during those Serbian civil wars or Yugoslavian wars. Now, this one is one that I picked up at TJ Gun Sales up in McMinnville, Oregon. As I understand it, they basically were able to pick up an estate sale with a guy who had a bunch of military surplus rifles. This is one of two that I've picked up from that. Hopefully I'll be adding a third here soon. But this is a gorgeous example of one of these rifles, and the prior owner was a tremendous steward of this rifle. It is in great shape. One of the first things I did once I picked it up was take the bolt out, look at the rifling, and it was pristine. Now, I had one of my patrons take a look at some close-up pictures of this thing, and he's under the impression that this might be one of the Mitchell's Mausers, which, you know, people can say what they will about the legitimacy of those. However, I'm definitely happy with this thing. It is a very good shooter, as you'll see. So let me go ahead and roll in some footage of me shooting this thing, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the features of this rifle. So starting from the back here, you'll notice this really high polished butt plate here. Now, while it looks very good, it doesn't feel very good. We have a really stout 8mm cartridge going off what would otherwise be a fairly lightweight rifle. This metal butt plate does, you know, transfer a lot of that energy into your shoulder, which doesn't feel great. On top of it not feeling really all that great, it does slide around a lot because it is polished metal. So I'm considering putting like one of those limb saver braces on it, not only to help mitigate that recoil a little bit, but to really improve the purchase. At least into my t-shirts, it just slides around a lot, and that's not always the best thing. Moving up here, you see this other polished bolt. It does have the slanted bolt. A lot of M48s are different. There's ones that have a straight out bolt, ones with a more angled bolt, and then this one that's fully canted down, as I'll show you in a picture. You have one position, which is with it in fire all the way here to the left. You have a second position where it's straight up and down. That will deactivate the trigger, but still allow you to cycle the bolt. And then you have a third position, which is, again, won't let you fire and also locks up the bolt. The nice thing is this one at least cycles really easily. Really, the first surplus rifle I'd ever had was a Mosin Nagant, and that thing was a pain to get the safety on and off. This is a lot easier to use, a lot more intuitive to use, and would be a lot easier to deactivate if I had to be, you know, using this thing in combat, which thankfully I don't. The nice thing about having that second position there being straight up and down is if I were to ever have to use this, I would definitely leave it in that configuration. So as soon as I bring my sights up, I have a visual indicator, hey, idiot, slap it over to fire before you can shoot, because it's right up into your line of sight. It prevents you from getting a sight picture and will let you know immediately that you have to knock that thing over to the side. As far as the way the bolt removes, it's very similar to any other Mauser out there. You have this little handle here, which you pull out, and that will allow you to remove your bolt. You see this giant extractor going down the length of the bolt there, which has been very effective. As you may see during some of the shooting, it does eject and those rounds very positively, and that big extractor really just rips it out there to aid in that. As I'm throwing this back in, you can see the magazine down there. It is a 5-round magazine, and you may be able to tell here there is a slot for stripper clips. Now, Mauser stripper clips, I'd never really used until shooting this rifle, and I gotta say, they are super easy to use. I'll go ahead and demonstrate that later since I don't want to load this thing up right now, but the stripper clips are very plentiful, they're available, fairly inexpensive, and they work very, very well also. So moving up, we have your rear sight back here, which goes all the way out to, what is that, 2,000 meters. Again, as you've seen on pretty much any surplus rifle I've reviewed, they are very optimistic about how far these rifles are supposed to be effective out to. And it kind of shows you the method of thinking and approach to tactics that a lot of militaries in the world had back then. Seems to be doing okay for me. The lowest I can get it is to 200 meters, and that does cause me to print pretty high at anything closer than that when I'm shooting at steel, as you'll see later, and maybe already, depending on how I edit this thing. I'm having to hold at the bottom left corner in order to get it to hit, and even then sometimes I'm hitting pretty high when I am missing. But very functional and goes really well with the front sight. Before I get to the front sight though, you do have a sling loop up here. Now this sling is just a reproduction cheapo that I picked up just to have something on this, and it does attach kind of the K98 method back here where it goes through the stock. Kind of weird, but it works. Up here you do have a cleaning rod, which is a nice feature for someone like me who believes in cleaning rods. You have a bayonet lug. I do not have the bayonet for this thing, unfortunately, but again, they are available out there if you do want to get one. And then here we have a hooded front sight. Again, this is one of those things that can kind of vary depending on which era your M48 comes from. This one has the hooded front sight. Not all of them are going to have that hood, but you have this really nice, I can't remember if this is called a barleycorn or if it's a blade. As far as you can tell as a shooter, it's a blade style front sight, so it kind of comes to a point. Maybe that is the barleycorn. I'm going to have people who are yelling at me for being an idiot, but you know, I can only remember so much. I really like the iron sight picture on this thing. It does make it very easy for me to hit that half silhouette back here, especially when I'm shooting from a rest, but even standing, I'm plugging away at it pretty consistently. And having that nice little tip on that chevron gives me a much more precise aiming than any other World War II surplus rifle I've shot so far, or later era, such as this one. Hopefully you're going to have a chance to see how that translates to accuracy, as this thing has been doing really well for me. I'm struggling with it today, but we're going to hopefully hammer out some nice groups to be able to show you, because at least before today I've been able to get like a good inch at 50 yards, which for me, shooting a rifle like this, is pretty dang good. Struggling a little bit today, but I'm going to change my setup and hopefully that'll fix things. Now, it does seem like this might be unique in that, as far as I know, because one of the other people I know who has an M48 says his is more like a 4 to 6 inch gun, whereas at least the way it's shooting now, it seems to be like a 2 to 4 inch gun at 100 yards. And just FYI, all the ammo I've been shooting has been from PPU. It's running really well through this thing, and it's, I think they're 190, what is it? 198 grain full metal jacket. Again, just working super well for me. Now with that, let me go ahead and show you a little bit about the ammo that this thing shoots in comparison to some other guns, just to give you a little bit of respect, hopefully, for the 8mm Mauser cartridge. So what I'm going to do is show you a picture side by side of this 8mm Mauser cartridge next to some other popular cartridges, both from the era as well as some modern day stuff. Again, just by way of reference, but again, this is a 198 grain bullet going pretty dang quick out of that barrel. And if you're like a history buff like me, you've probably seen the old propaganda video that they did for the GIs during World War II about the MG42 that the Germans were using, saying, oh, its bark is worse than its bite, you know, it has this high cyclic rate, but it hardly does anything to you. That thing shoots 8mm Mauser, and I can tell you, I don't want to get hit by one of these. I'd probably rather take a 30-06 if I had to pick one, which God forbid ever happens. I'd probably rather take a 30-06 than a 8mm Mauser, but you can be the judge of that yourself. Definitely a formidable round, and I don't think saying that its bark is worse than its bite is a very fair statement to make, but that's me. Now again, I'm going to go roll that picture in once again, just, you know, for good measure of it next to a 303 Brit round, a 7.62x54R round, a 308 round, and a 223 round. And you can see that again, it's just it's bigger than all of them. And if I had like a 300 Win Mag or something to show you, I'd throw that in there too, but I just don't own one, so I don't have one. But, you know, if someone wants to put the measurements of both in the comments, then by all means, go ahead and do that. I'll tell you, that 8mm definitely knocks that steel around. In fact, let me go ahead and set up a little slightly differently here, so that the camera's on the steel so you can see just how much this thing knocks it around. So just for reference, that paper target is at 50 yards, and that silhouette is 11.5 by 17, is at about 90 yards. So let's see what I can do. So I'm filming this actually after all the rest of the filming is done, and I was cleaning up and I was pulling this steel target back down from downrange, and just as a testament to the amount of energy that these rounds are putting down, granted I've been using this same 2x4 for a while with a couple different calibers. It was holding up fine, but today with shooting it significantly with the 8mm Mauser, the 2x4 is actually splitting down below. I'll try to take a picture of that so you can see it, but it's definitely no joke. Now that we've talked about ammo, I want to talk a little bit about these stripper clips. Now, as I mentioned before, you do have that little channel in front of the bolt face. These things work really well. You just drop it in there, push the rounds in. You don't even have to pull the stripper clip out. You can just close the bolt and it'll push it out unharmed. It'll still work. You can put more rounds on that stripper clip and this thing's ready to go. So I guess since we have it loaded, I'm going to take some more shots at that 90 yard steel to see how I do it. Last two were high, but not too bad. So I think that'd be a good segue to talk about the accuracy of this thing. So let me go ahead and get positioned back here. So let's go ahead and talk about the accuracy of this thing. Now, based off the groups I'm getting today, I'm thinking that maybe that inch group that I shot before was maybe only 25 yards, because all the shooting I've been doing at 50 yards today has been a little bit bigger than that. So let me just go ahead and start showing you here. Now, it starts bad and gets better because I was trying to wrestle around my Caldwell lead sled, and it's just not made for a rifle like this. At first it was just kind of bouncing all over the place due to the recoil and not having it went down properly. Also, the stock on this thing is too wide for the one on the lead sled that I have. So the first 5-shot group, these 5 right here. Now, part of that is just an inconsistent point of aim on my part, but some of that is from it being able to bounce around a lot. Now, the reason I had it unstrapped was because the iron sights on this are so low, if you have the strap around it, you can't see through your sights. So I decided, you know what, let's just try it anyway and see if I can do any better. So I went ahead and strapped it up and just did my best guess as far as where my front sight was, and that's when I shot this group. As you can tell, not significantly better, maybe slightly worse than the other group. And that's when I just decided, you know what, I was shooting better without the lead sled, ditch that and go back to just shooting off the rest with my hand supporting the stock, my support hand supporting the stock underneath. I guess that's why they call it a support hand. That's when I shot this group. Again, still at 50 yards. We have about 1.5 inches here and then one flyer down here. I blame that entirely on me, and probably again just my inconsistent point of aim, because these are targets that are designed to use with magnified optics because they're a low contrast target. So I went ahead and searched through my trunk and found a more high contrast target here. So I went ahead and did another 5-shot group, which you can see is a little bit better, actually better than all of those, at about 2¼ inches, with 4 right here at about a 1.5 to 2 inches. And then this guy up here definitely rounding the whole group out to about 2 inches. So I guess to correct my earlier statement, this thing is looking like about a 4 to 6 inch gun at 100 yards, because again, that's at 50. And just FYI, the reason I'm doing it at 50 is because my eyes with iron sights, if I'm shooting a 2-inch group at 50 yards, I'm not shooting a 4-inch group at 100 yards. I'm probably going to be shooting like an 8-inch group, just because my eyes cannot get a good, tight, consistent point of aim with these types of iron sights at those distances on these targets. So that's why I'm shooting at 50, just to give you a better idea of what the rifle can do. If I brought it back even closer, I could do even better, hence how I got that 1-inch group. In fact, you know what? Let me just go ahead and do that real quick. I'm going to put this target back up at 25 yards just to demonstrate what kind of difference that makes for me. So I just finished shooting that group at 25 yards, this 5-shot group right here. As you'll see, we have 4 shots in a line right here, with that 5th one bringing the total to about 1 inch. So that does kind of carry out to the 2-inch groups we're getting at 50 yards, which means again about 4-inch groups at 100 yards. But part of the contributing factor to this being a little bit tighter is just because it being closer, I can get a much more precise point of aim, which is going to give me more consistency as far as group size. Now, if I had a magnified optic, or if my eyes were better, I could probably do better at those further distances. But, you know, you saw me shooting that gong at 90 yards, or that silhouette at 90 yards, and having no trouble with that. So, you know, take that for what you will. It's definitely not the most accurate gun, but that's a pretty respectable group at 25 yards. And if I had more time behind it and better eyes, I could probably do maybe about that at 50 and extrapolate that out to 100 and so on. Also, one thing I should note too is you'll notice that these groups are all high and right. Again, part of that is because the lowest I can get it to is 200 meters. However, I've been using it mostly at 300 meters because it won't really stick in that 200, and halfway through the groups, it'll click over to 3, hence some of that vertical stringing in those first couple groups. But, you know, nonetheless, that's why that's happening. So overall, I think these are really great rifles. Unfortunately, the surplus market being what it is right now, you're probably not going to be seeing these imported in the same numbers that they were 10, 15 years ago. So if you're going to find them, you're probably going to find them on the secondary market here. Now, that said, they are available like that. That's how this one came into my hands, from an estate sale, then up to my buddy's shop up at TJ Gun Sales, and then into my hands. Which, by the way, if you are in Oregon, especially around McMinnville and that area, definitely check out TJ Gun Sales. That's where the Hasu SMC works. If anyone of you are familiar with his channel, which if you're familiar with mine, you should be familiar with his. I've been purchasing a lot of stuff up there recently, been doing a lot of work with them. Really good dudes up there, and I highly encourage you to check out their shop. Again, if you're in Oregon, it's a good place to stop at some point. As far as comparing this to other Mausers, that's not really something I can do because, again, I don't have experience with other Mausers out there, but I will say that this is a very fun gun to shoot, albeit within reason, just because of how hard this butt pad is back here. But I've gone through maybe 60, 70 rounds today, and I can still shoot a little bit more. And I probably will here momentarily. Now, as far as people who are looking to add a gun to their collection, I think that this is a really good option, as would be really any Mauser, because the aftermarket support for these is pretty plentiful. Again, I was able to pick up this cheapo sling, which I already know from shooting today. I'm probably going to replace it with a better sling, just because it keeps coming loose on me and adjusting itself, and that's obviously not a good thing. But you can get sights, you can get bolts, you can get hoods, you can get stripper clips, and the ammo is pretty plentiful. Again, I've been shooting the PPU stuff. I've been really happy with it, but from here on out, now that I have a bunch of good PPU brass, I'll probably start reloading for this, which should go on to tell you that I'm going to be keeping this thing. I'm a big fan of it. I really like it, and it has definitely earned a place in my collection. At some point in the future, I'd like to get a Mauser 98K, but in the meantime, this will definitely hold me over as far as my Mauser collection needs go. So if you have an opportunity to pick one of these up, especially if it's in really nice condition like this one, I'd say do it. You can also find ones that are veterans of those Serbian wars that have like little carve-outs and stuff, and that's pretty cool for people who like that. But this thing is just a beautiful rifle, and it's not only fun to look at, it's fun to come out and shoot, and as you seen, it shoots pretty well for an old rifle like this one. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead and throw those in the comment section down below. Try to get back to you as quick as I can. If you want to see other surplus rifles, definitely let me know. I have a Mosin M44 that's being lined up, and as I said earlier, there's a Enfield No. 4 Mark I that I'm hoping to add to the collection here soon. So if you have any other suggestions of other rifles to try out, definitely let me know, and I'll see what I can do for sure. These things are just a lot of fun to shoot. Their practicality in today's tactics, probably not so great, but at least for coming out and having fun shooting, it's hard to beat some of these old surplus rifles. If you are interested, I do have a Patreon page. I post all my content there early, as well as some exclusive content. I'm also doing live streams over there for my patrons every month, so if any of that sounds interesting to you, definitely check that out. You may have noticed that this video might have been a little bit choppy during the editing, and that's because of having to cut around people shooting around me. I'm really working to reduce the amount of ambient noise, let's say, during these videos, just because I know it can be distracting and make it hard to hear what I'm saying. So if it looked choppy, that's the explanation as to why. But anyway, with all that said, I hope you got something out of this video. I appreciate you watching, but I also have one last stripper clip loaded up. So I'm going to go ahead and take some more shots at that 90-yard silhouette, and we'll see how I do. I guess wish me luck. Yeah, I really got to aim low with this thing, but man, she'll do her part, that's for sure.